Now, like I said, this step is optional, but I still recommend it so you guys can test the load of your application and how much it can take, and if the lock is working, which we'll see soon. But for my Mac users, to get Jmeter, an easy install for Jmeter is to use Homebrew. So you can do brew install Jmeter, and that should get Jmeter for you. And for my Windows users, I'll leave a link down in the description to the download page for Jmeter. Now, for users who utilize Homebrew, like I did to get Jmeter, all you have to do is provide the path of where it is. So you can do open /opt/homebrew /bin/Jmeter. And then it should start the process of opening it up. So scanning and then opening it up. So this is how Jmeter look like by default without any additions yet. You should see the first thing is a test plan, and you can start adding to the test plan. So essentially breaking it down into different groups of different requests or other things that you provide within the test plan. So I'm going to open up a test plan that I already created for the Funds app, and then I'll break it down of what exactly it's doing. So here is my test plan. I call it the Funds test group. So the test plan itself is the root node of the test. So this is where it pretty much holds all your tests, because you could create more than one test group. In my case, I'm having one, and then I have sub requests within this test group. So I have one for get account, I have one for handling deposits, and I just have just a regular HTTP request, which I can use for anything else. But the group itself holds or can hold different groups, and the plans itself can hold different test groups. So I can have another group, or I can have one group just for accounts. I can have one group just for funds. I can create different subgroups. Now within the test group, you guys see a series of inputs, and you're probably wondering what it is. Well, first there is the name, right? The name is just the name of the group, right? In this case, I just call it the funds test group, um, but you can call it whatever you want. I just know that anything within this group is going to be related to funds. But then below you have things like number of threads, ramp up period, loop count. So the number of threads, as you can see in parentheses, is users, the amount of threads that will be executing on a specific request. So for example, the get account HTTP request. If I run this test group, there's going to be 5 threads or 5 virtual users that will run that request. So there'll be 5 different requests running this get account HTTP request. Now this ramp up period, and it defines it as, ramp up period in seconds. This defines how long will each thread have to wait in between before making another request. So before here, I said there's 5 users. So for each user, before the next user makes a request, how long should the next user wait? So I can do 0, which means that all the users will execute the request at the same time, which we'll utilize in the future because we need to test if the locks work. Because if there's concurrent requests, the application should know how to handle that. Or if I want to spread out the request, meaning I want the users to wait 2 seconds between another request, I could put 2 here, right? There's going to be a ramp up period between when the next request occurs. So if you want to space it out, you can by increasing the ramp up period. For the initial test, we can add a ramp up period, but then for future tests, to test out the concurrency issue, we're going to have to make this equal to 0 to make sure that, okay, if 5 users send a request for that same row of data, what happens? Does the application handle it as expected, or does it just let it do whatever it want to do, which will be an issue? And then there's the loop count. How many times do you want this to execute? There's even an infinite checkbox, but we don't want that. I'll just keep that as 1. Or if you want to increase that, maybe you want it to run 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you can place that value in there. But I just want it to run once and then end. And then you can also, specify whether you want it to be the same user on each iteration, or if you want to create different users, that's possible as well. Then there's, you could specify the delay of each thread creation, specify the thread lifetime. So by checking this, you can place how long you want the duration of the thread to last and the startup delay. So Jmeter provides a lot of this stuff that will allow for easy testing of how much our application can take. So that's why it's used a lot when it comes to load testing. Now here in the actual fun test group, I have different requests, like I said. So the get account HTTP request is, as the name implies, it's just going to be a get account HTTP request. So the protocol is HTTP. I'm running this locally. It's not HTTPS, it's HTTP. The server name or IP, in this case, I'm running it locally, like I said, so I'm using localhost. I specified the port number, which is 8081, which is the server port. I'm specifying the verb, so I'm doing a get request, and I'm specifying the path, which is accounts/1, which is the account ID, right? You don't have to put a / in front of the accounts. It's already provided. So you just have to provide the first URL and then continue to append on any additional information that is needed. And then here you can specify parameters or maybe the body data if it's a JSON, or upload files if you need to. But forgetting the account, I don't need that. I just need to provide the account ID. So that's how you make an HTTP request. And all you would have to do is right click on the group, go to add, go to sampler, and then you should see HTTP request, and you can see that you can start that process of adding the protocol, adding the server name or IP, adding the port number, the request type, so whether it's get, head, puts, anything like that, and then the path, right? And then if you have parameters, or if you have a body type, or if you have a file that you want to upload, you can place that in here. And there are other options like redirect automatically, follow redirects, use keep alive, and using multi-part forms. Like all of this is here if you need it. So that's how you create a new HTTP request. But like I said, I'm going to utilize the one that I already created. So I'm just going to delete that. So that is for get account. And I probably skipped a step. Like for the test plan, if you don't know how to create a group, all you have to do is right click and go hover over add, go to threads, users, thread group, and you can go ahead and rename that. And just like I just went over, you can specify the number of threads, meaning, virtual users, the ramp up period, etc., loop count, all that. So, and then you'll go from here and then add on the samplers of HTTP requests and all the other options that Jmeter has. But usually I just use the HTTP request, or even something like a post processor like JSON extractor, which will allow me to extract information from the response that was sent from the HTTP request. But that's beyond the scope of what I'm going to go over in this portion of the video. So let me delete that. That's how you create a thread group, and then you'll create any sub request that you need. And then within the um, request itself, you can add on additional things, like you could view the result tree, you can get a summary report, and something that's very important is the HTTP header manager, because with a request like get account, you're going to need um, an authorization header, and you're going to need to provide a bearer. You're going to need to provide the token, right? And like I just said, you can utilize something like the JSON extractor to, you can create a login request, which would then utilize the JSON extractor to extract the token from the response, and then you can automatically inject it into here using the uh, variable that you created using the JSON extractor. But just to save time, um, I'm not going to do that. I'll probably create another video to show you guys how to do that. So like I said, the HTTP header manager is going to be important because we need to provide the token to our application, because if we don't have a token, then it's going to deny our request. And we can utilize the view result tree to see the results as they come in. So I can actually run this and it's going to fail. As you can see, 5 requests came in, but they all got denied because the token is expired. I'm going to have to log in, extract that token, and provide that token here. Or you can dynamically do it utilizing the JSON extractor, but it's really up to you. There's a static approach of just making a login request, placing it here, or you can do the dynamic approach of using a JSON extractor and injecting the token here. But I'm going to go the static route because my token lasts 15 minutes and this should be relatively quick. But going back to the result tree, you can see that I can see the results of all the requests that I've done. And you can see that 5 requests came in pretty quick because of the fact that in the funds test group, I made 5 virtual threads. I made 5 threads, which actually has 5 users, and the ramp up period is 0, right? Meaning it's gonna do 5 requests concurrently right away. And you can see that it failed because the token failed. And you can see the response data. You can still see the header. It was denied, and it's as expected. But you can see that 5 came in pretty quick. And then you can also see the summary report of the amount of samples, how the average time it took, um, the amount of errors, 100% errors so far. So you can see all the information regarding the request that you sent to the application. Um, So that's pretty cool about JMeter. You can keep track of all of this. And to add that, all you'd have to do is right click. So to be able to add a view result tree and the summary report to a HTTP request, all you have to do is right click on the request, hover over add, and then you can see that in the listener, right? You can see that there are many things that JMeter provide so that you can visualize or see your data. There's the result tree, there's a summary report, there's even graphs. So there's so many options, right? But the two ones that I usually use is the view result tree and the summary report. But there are other ones that you can play around with, right? You can even get response time graphs. So there's many things that you can utilize to see your data and how your application is working over time. Then to add the HTTP header, right? You can go to the config elements and add the header manager, the HTTP header manager here. Or if you're using a cookie, you use the cookie manager, cache manager. There's other options, right? But the HTTP header manager will be utilized to add the headers to add the token. So that's the three that we'll be utilizing um, for testing the requests. And the same thing for handling deposit, right? We had the view result tree, the summary report, the HTTP header manager. But in this case, another header that I'm adding is the content type, which is application/JSON. Because if I go into the HTTP deposit, you can see that it's same thing, HTTP, localhost is the server name, port is 8081, but in this case, it's going to be a post request to the path of transaction/deposit. And before it was a GET request, we didn't utilize a body, but in this case, I am utilizing a body and it is a JSON. So I need to provide the to account ID and the amount. And that's the reason why in this header manager, I'm utilizing content type of application/JSON so that the app knows that I'm sending a JSON and it knows how to handle it properly. So that is the reason why I provided that in the header. And with the header manager, that's pretty easy. And you can see that I can utilize or I can provide a JSON using the body data tab here, right? Or if you have parameters that need to be appended onto the path, then you can use parameters. But um, body type is what I'm using here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in really quick. I'm going to grab my token from Postman, and then I'm going to paste it into this header manager, and you can see it in action. All right, so here I am in Postman. I'm going to log in really quick. I'm going to grab this token, and then I'm going to head over back to Jmeter so that I can provide that in the HTTP header manager. So here I am in Jmeter again. I'm going to go here into the HTTP manager. I'm going to extract this, paste that in. I'm also going to provide this into the deposit. And honestly, you can utilize all of the uh, paths if you want to. Like I said, you can utilize a dynamic approach so you don't have to do this every time, but just to save time, I'm doing this approach. And you can see before that it failed 5 times. And you got to make sure that you actually have an account signed up and this is a valid token, obviously. But before we saw 5 failed requests when we ran this. And when I press this play button, it's going to run everything within this group. So it's going to attempt to get the account. It's going to attempt to deposit. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But we pasted in the token and this should work. Let's cross our fingers. So let's see. So as you can see, 5 running request. And then if I go into the second one, right, we see, oh, wow, what happens? Well, 1 went through, but 4 failed. And that's expected, right? Because we don't want 5 deposits to occur at the same time. We just want 1 to go through, which is expected. And if I run this again, you can see that 1 goes in again, but then the other 4 failed as expected because we only want 1 thing to change concurrently, right? We don't want all of them to change just 1. And right now I'm just receiving a 400 request. If I go into response, I'm not receiving any body, but I am getting denied. I'm receiving a 400 request as you can see here. But in the future, we're going to clarify and fix this messaging so that the client knows what exactly is the issue. But it's working as expected in the sense that only 1 request go through. And if I go back to Postman, I can see what occurs with my account. If I go into the account, and I already logged in, but if I try to get the account by ID, or I could just get all the accounts, press send, I can see there's only $200 in this account, right? Because only 2 proper requests went through. So the account is reflecting the balance that I'm expecting. So the locks and the transactions are working as expected because it is making sure that other requests don't happen simultaneously when there are concurrent requests. Only 1 request is happening at a time.